Hello guys, good afternoon. Heavy lunch. I think this is not a really tough topic. This is definitely easy, and I would make it much easier. I'm Aravind, so I work at Elastic and I look after the developer relations for India and Southeast Asia as well. This is my first time to Philippines. I enjoyed staying here. I love the food and I love the people. So kind. Thanks for being nice with me, even though I don't know the language. For that being said, what we are going to discuss today is something that is very probably important for a lot of you if you are developing apps based on Python. It could be on something like Django, Flask, or any web framework if you are developing, or even if you are developing a backend framework as well. So let us go into the topic and see what we have in the stock, right? So I'll explain how this entire technology stack works, and then I'll also tell what is this concept called APM, because it is useful for, it might not be very evident to a lot of people. We will look into what APM is, hopefully much easier, but not like a book's definition. But also like see why you need to use this, or what is the motivation for this entire thing, and most importantly what it can and with what it can't do. Now that being said, I'm not going to bore you with only slides and do death by PPT. I definitely want you to help me as well. So this is something related to data, right? So I have tunneled my entire application open to you. So that means whatever is running on my laptop is open to you. So you could just log into this URL, like just click on this URL, type in your browsers, and you'll be able to see a Django app. So if you just interact with it, it will generate data for this particular session. So if you could, but this is only for this session. So if you log in and generate data, at the end we'll see how this data could help us. So that's it. So if you want to take a look, click on the link and look at the app, right? So I hope that you have taken note of this link. But what is this stack, or what does Elastic do, or what basically this company does, and how it plays a role in Python, etc., etc. So Elasticsearch, or Elastic as a company, is an open source company. It's a company behind the Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana, Beats, and all of these open source projects. We use Python at various levels, mainly at build automation. We have a famous Python consultant, probably some of you might know, his name is Honza. So he does a lot of PyCon talks. We interact with the Python community, and we do a lot of community engagement with Python. We have a Python client which is popular for Elasticsearch as well. So Elasticsearch basically, coming to the stack, Elasticsearch is basically a search engine, open source distributed search engine. There are a lot of technologies that I could talk, like REST based, or like distributed and so API based search engine. Kibana is a window into Elasticsearch through which you will be able to see what's happening in your on your data. It's like an analytical platform. Beats and Logstash are the places where you could push the data to into the stack. So today we are not going to see, this entire stack is open source, but we are not going to see more about this particular framework or anything about search or anything. So there are several solutions that you could build on top of this stack, right? Like search, any sort of search engine for your Python app, or analytics, etc., etc. But we are only gonna look at this particular thing called APM. So APM is application performance monitoring. So this is like the when I searched on the bookish definition, right? I got this from the Wikipedia, and you know how I started this entire presentation. I said like I'll make it interactive and do it like that. So but by now you might be having this face, right? Like, really? Is this what you want to show it to me, right? So no, I'll try to explain by a story how you could take advantage of this open source framework or library, right? So on a Friday, right? I don't know how things work in Manila or here. When do you do deployments? But for me, right, on a Friday evening or Saturday morning, like I just push my code into the production. I start enjoying, like I go for a pizza, like I try doing plans with my girlfriend and all. So it's all like funny times, right? Suddenly you see something like this, right? Right? You see this screen and like see, hey man, and your friend starts calling you. By the time you come back, right? And it shits broke like really crazy, right? It thinks doesn't work, and you try doing every damn thing to make things work back, and when you do all of this, right, finally this happens, right? It loads up, but it doesn't really show you any screen. It keeps loading and loading and loading, right? And then you finally feel like you open all of these to look into logs, look into what happened with my Python app, or trying to search on Google or Stack Overflow and like try to find out that Python error which came in the last line. Okay, a lot of things, right? So error is like error handling is really difficult. I'm not able to figure out a lot of times. Then you will get to this stage, right? Debugging is done, right? I'm not able to do any more, right? It's kind of done. So that's where, right? At a lot of times, right? How I felt is when doing all of these, if there is a tool, if there is a framework which could tell me what's happening in the production, I really can't put a debugger or an interpreter and start doing in the cloud, right? I can't do that for an app which is running in production. I can't really look at all the logs that are getting generated forever and like keep doing Control F and like exception, Control F trying to find out that, right? So is there someone who could help me and kind of like collate all this information and show me only errors and try to tell me that, okay, this is your issue, or tell me this sort of thing? So I don't know at that point of time, probably 3 or 4 years before, there exists this sort of a thing called APM. So what APM essentially does is APM will help you collect the data from various apps. So it could be Python for you, but it could be React for some people, it could be Java for some other people. So these are language agents. So what basically they do is like they collect data and like sample it from the production, and then like they show you in a UI, and so that you will be able to do you will be able to analyze what's happening in your app. So I'll show you a detailed demo of what it is, how it works, and more details. But as a developer, if I am putting I have released something onto the cloud or some other server, then I want some visibility into the things happening, right? So this way you would get that visibility. If you are a manager, or if you are a person who manage a team, and like probably if you want to look at something like how is my app performing, like whether this thing has gone well, right? You want to show metrics, you could do that as well. Now this entire framework that I'm talking about, like the product itself is like open source, all the agents, everything is open source. Now we support a host of frameworks because we believe that Python is really good for some particular use cases. You have React and Node.js, which are really good for some other front-end use cases. So how do you collect data from all the things? When you do an enterprise app, or when you do a application, you will not stick to one language, right? You do best of lot, everything, right? So you kind of like need to collect or see what's happening in everywhere throughout your tech stack, complete tech stack. Right? So we have a Python agent. Likewise, we have all sorts of language agents. But Python agent supports all the popular frameworks like Django and Flask. If you think that you have a custom framework in your company or your own hobby project, you could still use the public API in this language agent and still ship data and from your code. Now, when I talk about data and a lot of things, you need to still understand that, okay, this particular framework, how it works. Now, coming to that, let us see how it really works. So if you see here, I spoke about agents, I spoke about server, I spoke about Elasticsearch and Kibana and a lot of stuff, right? But how does this really get into production? How do you package this entire thing? It's as simple as this, right? So you go to a Kibana instance. So this is called Kibana. So this is a UI layer on top of Elasticsearch. So whenever you click on K, this top K, right, you will be able to see one particular add data kind of a wizard to you, right? You can click on add APM, and there will be detailed instructions on whatsoever OS that you run, right? It could be any sort of OS. So you would be able to run this. You can copy snippet and run this. And most importantly, your APM agents. So when I say APM agents are libraries which go along with your app, which go along with your Python app or whatsoever app, right? Language app. So it gets injected into that and then ships data. So here if you see in terms of Django, like you do pip install Elastic APM, and then you could also do specific modules only by doing pip install Elastic APM, open tracing. You can do a lot of specific installations as well. Then you add this in your configuration file, and every framework has its own specific configuration file, right? And different ways to tackle this thing. So if you go to Flask, it's a bit different. So and then you click on launch APM, then it takes to APM, right? So currently my app, which I have, is written in Python with a React front end. We'll get to that. So basically, this architecture which I explained you is like you have several of these agents, application libraries, which are running in your app and which ship data back to something called APM server, the app server, and then that collates all the data and puts in Elasticsearch so that you will be able to see a lot. Now, what APM can exactly do is like monitor your application. Yes, it could trace your code. That means like it could tell how much amount of time each line is taking. So something like that. So if you have a snippet of code, completing an e-commerce transaction, right? So you will have, after addition to cart, like you can put that particular trace and see how this function is performing, like how this Python function is performing. You could also see, you could also make sure, like debugging is one big thing that I really love, because it saves you a lot of time when your customer reports that one intermittent bug which is only getting reproduced in your production, which doesn't get reproduced in your in-house, like in your own local system, right? So that sort of things also really helps you. Now, what the demo that I'm going to show is like it's already on GitHub. You could definitely go and fork this project and like run this using the Docker, any other container system. Otherwise, you could also compile this entire project and build it by yourself. So Opbeans Python is the application written in Django. So basically, what I do is like this is a coffee shop application where I have this on the localhost, running on localhost 8000. Now this is a Python application running on my local machine. Along with that, I also have Elasticsearch and APM server which is running in the background, right? So which takes all of this data. Now I could, this is just simple like application wherein you could see what sort of like details that are there and orders, like even a lot of details regarding the application, who are the customers, a lot of details. So this is just a basic app which is having a database, in-memory database like H2, and trying to add data, etc. Now the same thing I could monitor here, the same service I could monitor here using the Opbeans Python. And what I could also see is like how each of this page is responding to the customer's request. And I could also see that how many transactions are happening per minute, how is the response time. I could, most importantly, I could see where it is interacting. So for example, at a lot of times when I'm developing things, my database takes more amount of time. Like I don't know where the bottleneck is, but my apps is really irresponsive, right? So if I want to see how much each system is taking time, so I need to know about that, right? This particular span kind of methodology which we have, so wherein you will be able to see from the start of the request, like from clicking localhost 8000 dashboards, you'll be able to see the entire request and see what are the things that are happening, right? So you'll be able to see all of these details. Not just this, you will also be able to find out how many users are using your application from a specific browser, right? Whether they were using it from Chrome, do they have any issues? You will be able to find out all such details, performance of your app from all sorts of angles. Now, that being said, I also told that you could debug errors, or you could do more details regarding that. Now, I have an inbuilt error which I have created. When I do something, it will occur. So when you get errors will be logged here, through which you will be able to find out to the code point what the error is and how it was propagated. So now all of these details, it's completely done by your agent. You no need to do anything. You just need to bootstrap your agent in your index, or like index.py or a base core file, and then things get flowing automatically. Now this is how the entire system works. Now one more important point when you talk about any framework, right? Whenever you talk about any framework, that people tend to forget, that I also realized over a period of time, is like what it doesn't do, like what it can't do, because you can know that what things you will be able to achieve, but having known about like what you can't do with that particular solution helps you a lot to remove that things from that. So what it will not do is your infrastructure monitoring, is like your the server monitoring, or like how the server, what amount of RAM it is taking, the application, or how much is the CPU usage. There are some additional parameters that are out of your application boundary. You will not be able to see that, right? You can't analyze your logs. You can't push your logs kind of entire thing to again using this particular framework. You can't really detect security attacks, because that is outside your app as well. So that is again different. You can't do AppSec as well. So that is again something that comes out of this. So, but how do we can help? So whatever we saw is in the middle layer, like application performance, application level monitoring. But you could also use a RUM agent that we have, through which you will be able to collect the information from the browser itself, like how user is playing between your Python app and your browser, and how the interactions are working, and how much time it is taking, whether there is any problem in the UI framework itself. Like you could do all such stuff. You could also collect logs using the same stack. So you can build an overall experience around your application and do a complete developer stack, and then work on top of everything. And that's how you could use everything. Now this is the URL. If you are looking for like the more and more kind of like details about this particular thing, it contains a detailed explanation of the video, how you could tune this each and every agent, and it also contains some details related to the blog posts and the technical forum to ask questions. It's nothing. It's a simple bit.ly/PyCon APAC, right? APAC is in capitals. Now, if you have any questions or more details to be done, I'm really happy to take.
So you're saying that you don't need to instrument your code in order for the agent to collect data on it?
So you need to add this library into your index.py or the root file, wherever the index file where the application starts, the application pointer starts. It automatically instruments your code. Okay. But also you could instrument only specific code as well.
Okay, so you can optionally instrument.
Yeah, you can optionally choose only instrument this.
Then what kind of overhead does collecting the data impose on your application?
So we try to make it very less. It's kind of like really negligible as of now today, but it can collect huge amounts of data from your application. Like, because if you have 1 million users interacting to your app, it will generate some GBs of data. So how we would say is we would say to sample the ratio like every 5 seconds or something like that. That way it would be much beneficial for you as well, because you don't want everything to be collected. You just want some things to be collected, right?
You can configure that on the server side, or you configure that on the source agent side?
So you configure that on the agent side. So every setting that we spoke about is mostly around the agent, because the agent itself collects the data. The most important setting that you might want to change on your server side is like you change your how much data to be persisted, like how much is a queue size, etc. like that. You could also cache your request headers. You will be able to see more of these details.
Hello, Genesis from Globe Lab. So basically, all our APIs are using the Elastic stacks. So how do you manage the scaling of your, or any recommendation about the scaling? So right now we archive the 3 months prior logs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely not related to this conversation, but I will take it offline, because there could be multiple things when you talk about scaling your application. It is very, very dependent on the kind of use case that you have. But this particular talk is only aimed at APM. We will take that conversation offline, because Elastic could be used as a search engine, as a log analytical engine. It could be used for a security hunting platform, threat hunting platform. So yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I'm just about curious on how you implement the Elastic APM. Like, for example, you're going to put the agent into the program and to collect the profile. How does Elastic manage this data? Are you like also collecting this data about the application?
Yeah, we kind of collect all the data and put it in Elasticsearch, and then that is where we run this analytics on top of it. So yes, the agent is in the application. Yes, I mean, I that's how, if that's the question.
Yeah, I mean the company itself. Are you like also copying the data from the application if in case we are using the Elastic APM?
So we don't copy the application's data. That means, like, if you are storing, if you're an e-commerce company or some app which does store the data in database, we don't look into that. We take the data of your application metadata. Like, suppose if you have an app running in a cloud, right, in some cloud, and then if your app is interacting, if your app has a page like views and customers, or again products, such sort of pages were there which contain some business logic, we see how the code is working. We don't see what data is being inputted. We don't collect the data of that is you are storing your customer data. We collect only the data related to your app, that to app metadata.
Okay, so the Elastic APM is free,
Yes, it's open source.
open source.
I would call it as like open source rather than free.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the talk. It was really good. My question is, let's say you have a microservice related stack, and you have a request that fails further down the microservice stack. Is it able to follow the request or the stack trace that is cross-host or cross-repo?
Perfect. So you will be able to do that. So when I say this, like, there is something called distributed tracing. In today's world, you have everything as a container. So suppose you do Python for a specific use case, and you do React interfacing for the other thing, and you have Java for some other APIs, right? So you could still use this distributed tracing. We are distributed tracing or open tracing compliant. That means, like, you will be if you have different language APIs as well, you could correlate all of them. You could still correlate and find out the bugs. You could also see what is the handover, how much time each stack is taking. Everything is possible. Yeah, it is perfectly crafted for that microservices mode as well.
Thanks.
Hi. So I have two questions. One would be, does Elastic APM have capabilities for alerting, like sending alerts whenever a particular metric exceeds a threshold or something?
Yeah, we do have.
Okay. The next question would be, is it usable for non-HTTP based client servers? For example, RPC frameworks and gRPC. Is it able to demarcate which is the start of the request and the end of the request?
Yeah, it will be able to do that. That's what I was trying to explain. It will be able to find out that start of the request, end of the request. It will also be able to get you the request headers if you let it do that. In the case of HTTPS, I think the body is encrypted, and you need to do something specific, some keys or something to get the details, but you will still be able to do that.
It was more specifically for example, Apache Thrift, the RPC framework. Is there not
Apache?
Thrift,
Swift.
RPC framework. So
Okay.
is there not typically web servers? So how
Yeah.
will it be? We were having problems with New Relic, especially for RPC frameworks, because they're not able to tell which is the start of the request and the end of the request for an RPC framework. Because you can easily do that for an HTTP request, but not for an RPC request.
Yeah, I just need to check the framework documentation. I think that until or unless, I mean, like if your gRPC framework, when you write an app, if you could put this request at the right place, you'll be able to track many things. But provided that there could be some exceptions, maybe the kind of framework that you're using. I have never used Swift, but I would like to take a look as well.
One final question would be related to non-HTTP based requests. Do you think that this would be able to replace profilers? For example, we have batch scripts that are not necessarily yet. Are we able to just run it and then have it replace our typical profilers?
So the typical profiler does a lot of things, not just app monitoring. It also collects information about your hardware, also a bit of hardware and RAM and a lot of details. So you will be able to replace some profilers. But if you are looking at more advanced, then I would like you to refer through that stack, right? Then you need to collect other information like logs and metrics. Metrics, most importantly, metrics of that particular environment actually. But you will be able to alienate or remove the profilers. Suppose if you are having a Java kind of a environment and you even some Python profiler to profile your app, you don't need to do that actually. You can collect more information here as well.
Hi, I'm Aaron. My first question is that, so we have a Elastic Search deployed in PaaS in AWS. So am I right that we need to install the APM in the PaaS as well? It is consumed in a .NET application, so, with API.
So I think today we don't have a .NET agent. So I think it's in alpha. It's already there. I mean, but it's not GA, right? It's not generally available. So you could definitely start using it. Second thing, you need to inbuild this, as I keep saying that, right? You need to put this library into your application to do everything, right? To get data. So you could push it to any Elasticsearch server. Actually, you could push it to anywhere. But probably you will not be able to see this UI there, because that is something that we ship and it's specific to us. You will not be able to find it in AWS.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much, Mr. Aravind Putrevu, for giving